Hey Finxters! Today we are going to discuss how to flatten a list of lists in Python. Now many of you might be wondering what is flattening a list? The answer to it is quite simple. Flattening a list is the process used to convert a multi-dimensional or nested list of lists into a one-dimensional list. Now I will be showing you what's that. However, before moving on to that, let's discuss the type of list flattening. Now list flattening can be of two types. One, shallow flattening, and two, deep flattening. So let's understand what's a shallow flattening and then we shall discuss what's a deep flattening. Shallow flattening is the process of flattening lists that only have a depth of one level. Deep flattening is the process of flattening lists that have varying depths. Now what do I mean by that? Suppose we have the following list, li, and inside it we have couple of lists. The first one stores values 10 and 20, while the second one stores the values 20 and 30, or maybe 25 and 30, because I want to avoid conflicting values as of now. Now this is a list which has a depth of level 1. Now in order to understand it better, let me show you another list which has a depth which is greater than 1. Now the first list inside the list li holds the values 10, 20. Then we have our second list which has the value 30, and now consider we have another list inside this list such that it has the value 40. Now what if I say that the list which contains the value 40 is inside another list? So what does that mean? This means 40 is within a list, it is again within another list, and then again another list. So as you can see, the list containing 10 and 20 are in the depth of 1, that is within a single list. However, when we come to this list which holds the value 40, it is within one list which is within another list which is again within another list. So I hope the depth of lists are clear to you. Let me clear out the screen. Now that brings us to the topic of today's discussion. Our problem is to flatten lists. So what do I mean by that? Let me go back to our programming screen again. I shouldn't have deleted it anyway. We always have the facility of Control Z. So as you can see, we have our list li, and now it holds couple of more lists inside it. So we want an output that would print a list that is a single dimensional list, 10, 20, 25 and 30. I hope you can visualize the difference. This is a single list which has all the values 10, 20, 25 and 30. However, initially the list had couple of more lists which had the values separately stored in them. So the methods that we are going to use to solve that are using a for loop. Then we will be using a list comprehension to flatten the list. Then we will move on to a method called flatten to simply flatten our list. Then we move on to deep flatten method. Now it is very important to understand the difference between flatten and deep flatten method, which you will be visualizing pretty soon. And then finally we will use a while loop to flatten our list. So that's the plan of this video. So let's jump into or dive into our solutions. So we have our list li. Now we create an empty list flat li which will store the values, or this is the list which is flattened. Now since we are using our first method, so we'll use a for loop for I in li. Then we need another loop for item in I. So in the first loop, we are iterating over the list li, and in the second loop, we are iterating over the values. Once we derive the values one by one, all we need to do is to append them to the flattened list or flat li, append item. Now we are only left with printing out the list. So print flat underscore li, which stores the flattened list. So let's check if this works. And there we go. So you can see that the list was initially like this. However, after flattening the list, it becomes a pretty simple list which stores the values 10, 20, 25 and 30. Now that brings us to the next method, which was using a list comprehension. So let's see how we can use a list comprehension to solve this problem. Now if you know about list comprehensions, then it might be very clear to you that this is a very concise and effective way of flattening lists in Python. Just a recap, list comprehensions are a compact way of creating lists. So they basically have a formula like an expression plus context. If you do not know how to work with list comprehensions, do not worry, I'll provide you a link below in the comments or in the description, and you can follow the link and you will have an entire tutorial on list comprehensions. However, let's focus on flattening lists in this video. So let's check out how we can use a list comprehension and flatten our list. So we already have our list. Let me clear out the output screen. Let's delete the part that we do not need, and we simply need a single line. So this can also be considered as a Python one-liner. So we print item for I in li for item in I. If you look closely, then it's nothing but the previous method. For example, I mean the for loop that we used previously in a single line. So we have couple of iterators and then we simply print out the items inside the list. So let's check if this works, and there we go. As you can see, this works as well. Now that brings us to the next method of flattening lists. Now this is pretty interesting. We are going to use the flatten method or the flatten function. Now the flatten function will help you flatten lists which have a depth of level 1. As in this case, like the list that we have on the screen li, it has a depth of 1. An interesting thing about flatten is a part of numerous Python libraries. The library that we are going to import as of now is the iteration utilities library. So we'll import the flatten function from the iteration utilities library, and then we will simply flatten our list using the flatten function. Now it is also a part of few other libraries which I will be mentioning before ending the video, and you can also have a look at them in the article. So let's use flatten and flatten our list. We need to import iteration utilities, and from iteration utilities we need to import the function flatten. Now we have our flatten function imported. All we need to do now is simply use it. So print, use the flatten function, and then li. Now let's check if this works. So as you can see, we need to explicitly install the iteration utilities library. So since I am using it on REPL, so they are installed automatically. So you need to install it explicitly before you can use the flatten function from the iteration utilities. Now as you can see, it returns an object. So we simply need to typecast our output as a list. And now check if this works. And there we go. So all we did was to use the flatten function and it worked for us. Now that brings us to the next method, deep flatten. So now you might be thinking, we already used flatten, so why use deep flatten? Why an extra word deep? So do you remember in the beginning of the video I told you the difference between shallow flattening and deep flattening. Now if you noticed, the example that we were solving until now was a list that had a depth of level 1. So we were basically doing a shallow flattening. Now we will be using the deep flatten method to perform a deep flattening. So let's move into our programming screen. Let's clear out the screen. Now we need to change the list. So we have the list which contains the values 10 and 20. And now let's make a slight change. We have another list inside the list li, and that list is yet again another list which has some value, maybe 15. So now we have another list which has a different depth, like it is not having a depth of level 1. So let's check how we can flatten this list. That means how we can go inside each depth and then flatten it level by level. Now deep flatten is also a part of the iteration utilities library. So you have to again install it explicitly if you haven't already. So I have already done it, so I won't need to explicitly install it again. All I need to do now is to import deep flatten instead of flatten. Now all I need to do is use the deep flatten method, flatten, and we simply print the list. We also need to explicitly typecast it to a list, otherwise it will simply print out the object. Now let's check if this works. And as you can see, we have flattened our list successfully. Now let's have a look what happens if we simply use the flatten method. Let's remove deep flatten and just use the flatten method. Now let's print this out. I hope you can see the difference on the output screen. Flatten could not flatten the list beyond a depth of level 1. However, when we used the deep flatten method, it went inside all the levels and then flattened our list completely. Let's check again, and there you go. We have the list completely flattened. Now you might be saying, I do not want to import or use any other external library. So don't I have any other method for deep flattening a list? Of course we do have another method of doing that. We will simply use a while loop to do that. So let me show that to you. We have our list here. Now we need a function which I'll call flatten, and then I'll pass our list li into the function. Let me remove this as well. We do not need it as of now. I'll tell you why I'm doing that, because that will help me explain you better and arrange the code in a better structure. So we have our function deep flat by the name deep flatten, or maybe flatten, it should have been def. And now we define an empty list by the name li, Then we start our while loop. While L. So we are using this loop to iterate until the given list is empty. Now we have a variable e inside the loop, and we pop the elements of the list one by one. Then we use an if statement to check if the popped item is a list. So type of e, that is the item that we just extracted, is a list. In that case, we extend the item to the given list. So we use the extend method here. Now suppose if the item is not a list, it is just an element, for example 10 or 20. In that case, we have our else statement, and we will simply append the value to the empty list li. Now we simply return li, and that's it. Now we also need to create a list. So let me name it A. That has another list which has the values 100, 150. Then another list which has again another list, since we are trying to deep flatten our list. So we need a list which has a level of depth greater than 1. That's why I use 200 to be inside a nested list. And let's define a couple of more values, maybe 300 and 400. Now we need to pass the value to the function. So what's the name of the function? It's flatten, I guess. Yeah, flatten. And then we pass the list A inside it. So it's time to check if this worked. We have an error there. Let's check. Of course, we have an indentation error. We also have a video on indentation error by Chris. So I hope you would like to have a look at that too. Now let's see if this works. And there we go. It did work. But it's in the reverse order. So what can we do here? We can use another method known as reverse. Reverse is nothing but an inbuilt method in Python that is used to reverse objects of list. So let's use that method and get the correct output. Since now this happened because we use the pop method, and what that does is it will extract the items from the end of the list. So as you can see, the output is in reverse order. So that's why we are going to use the reverse method, and then simply reverse our list and get the correct output. So li dot reverse, and that should be it. Now let's check the output, and there we go. We have the desired output. Now that pretty much brings us to the end of this video. I hope you liked it and you understood how to flatten a list of lists in Python. Now before wrapping up, I want to show you something. We have the entire article on flattening a list. I'll provide you the link in the description below. However, I want to show you something. You can use different external libraries in Python, import them and use the built-in functions within them to flatten your list. You do not need to reinvent the wheel. So if you have the facility to import external libraries, then you can definitely import them, then use the inbuilt methods within them and flatten your list. So as I mentioned before, flatten or the function flatten is also a part of numerous other Python external libraries. some of which are pandas, matplotlib, unipath, and setup tools. We also have another library called the functools, and you can also utilize it to flatten a nested list. You can use functools for a better time complexity as well. So if you know how to use matplotlib, then you can use a graph and compare each method separately. Also, for your convenience, I have provided a link to each library so that you can, go and read about them. We have articles about them on our website, so I encourage you to go and read more about them. I hope that was enough for this video. If you enjoyed it, please like the video and do not forget to subscribe our channel and hit the bell icon to get more videos like this. Goodbye.